food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
Horror Movie Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the House of Ghouls podcast. I'm your host, Colby Does Horror, and I'm joined, as always, with my best friend and co-host, Ian Van Ghoul. And today we have a very special guest. Last episode, we spoke about a short film we both watched called Alice and the Little Green Men. So today we are joined by director Anthony Columbus and actresses from the short film, Ashley, is it BeLoat? BeLoat, and Alice Skok. So how are you guys doing today?
Awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thank you for sending this to us.
Yeah, I mean it's our pleasure, really. It's a self-financed project. So being able to reach out to the community and having you guys talk about it and tell people about it, raise awareness, has been a huge asset for us. And we just can't thank you enough for the support.
Yeah, absolutely. Right when I saw it, I was like, my co-host needs to see this. I need to send this to Ian.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think, thank God for Ian, and I'm sure we'll dig into things a little bit more as this goes on, but thank God for you guys recognizing it as a horror film.
So also, right before we started recording, I was saying how in most short films, it's showing off like your skills with practical effects, the blood, the gore, just having fun, you know? And this one, for a 20-minute short film, how well written it was and how many different emotions I felt during it, I was just blown away by it. What was your biggest inspiration when writing this?
Yeah, so there's I think two parts to that a little bit. It's are you talking about what inspired us to make an alien abduction movie, or what inspired the stuff that was underneath, like what it's really about?
Everything.
Okay. Let me just try to think about how to summarize this really quick, because I'm not that cool to talk about this for hours. So the stuff that it's underneath it, right? The stuff that the film's really about, that came from a really difficult experience working on a bigger project in the entertainment industry with a big network streamer and some bad partners.
Mhm.
And what happened was that project stalled a little bit, and I was trying to figure out how do I get these ideas out? How do I tell the story under with the assumption that other project may never come out? How do we get this out? So that was kind of the genesis of Alice and the Little Green Men. If things had gone smoothly on that project, this project actually would never exist. So that's kind of the underneath stuff. And the alien abduction stuff was just kind of trying to find a vehicle, once you kind of know what you want to say, what's the right vehicle to take it from point A to point Z. And I thought, oh my, this is a horror film for sure, based on the content. And then it's, what hasn't been done before. It's a little bit about that, right? And kind of how do those tropes also fit into the ideas we're trying to express. So long story short, I guess that's kind of how it came to fruition.
I love how it was all blended in so well, how it starts as one thing and then it ends or in the middle it becomes something else and then ends as something else. It just blended so well together with everything.
You guys are the horror experts. I mean, so for me, I'm a huge horror fan, but what I love about horror films, what I love about films in general, but especially about horror films is when they're able to surprise you and grab you and show you something that you haven't seen before. So once we decided we were going to make a horror film, it was like a no-brainer. We wanted to definitely twist and turn the audience, right?
Okay.
Speaking of being a fan of horror films, I want to bring Ashley and Alice into this as well. Are you fans of horror films? And if so, what are some of your favorites?
Ooh, this is a fun question. Alice, do you want to go first?
Sure. I was not a fan of horror for a long time. But then I started dating a person who would watch 31 horror movies every October. So I quickly became kind of accidentally a fan. So I've seen a ton. Well, last year, I'll have to figure out for this year because I have some catching up to do. But last year, my favorite film was When Evil Lurks. Did you guys see that one?
Oh,
Yep,
yeah.
that was in my top 10 of last year.
Just it's I mean, Colby before we started recording was talking about being a parent. I imagine that's not easy to watch as a parent either.
No.
But then I also recently rewatched the original Alien, and that holds up so well. I fully, knowing what's coming, fully jumped at all the jump scares. The suspense still works. Love that movie. Love Possession, 1981, on Andre something. And then Raw is another one of my favorites. That's
I love Raw.
I think like Teton got a lot of love and a lot more recognition, but I think that's my favorite of her movies.
Good choices. Good choices. How about you, Ashley?
My introduction to horror movies started with Hitchcock films, and then I moved on to Jaws. And as a Florida girl, that thoroughly terrified me. I was not going into the ocean anywhere near as much. But in more modern day things, I do love Us. And I also love the movies that really make you pay close attention. I know this is more in the thriller category, but Shutter Island is one that I could watch and rewatch. And going back to the nostalgia, Silence of the Lambs, I love that one too.
Did you see Longlegs?
I did.
What do you think of Longlegs?
I loved the time period it immersed us in. The styling was beautiful. The shots were incredible. There were some things I did really like about that film. What
That's
were
a
your
polite answer, isn't it?
Was so different.
I loved it.
Polite answer if I
Longlegs is
ever
in
heard
my-
one, Ashley.
Longlegs actually made my top 5 for the year for 2024 right now.
Okay.
Longlegs is really, yeah, I thought it was well made. This does beg a question though, and this is like hopefully not recent PTSD for you guys, but you know, how do you guys define horror films? I know it's kind of a tailor-made question here for like what do you guys consider? Where do you draw the line? Is Jaws a horror film or is it not? Is American Psycho a horror film or is it not, right? Is Strange Darling a horror film?
I don't
That's-
think Strange Darling is, no.
No.
I thought Longlegs was more thriller with heavy horror elements.
Yeah.
Jaws you can definitely consider a horror creature feature film. What was the other one?
American Psycho.
American Psycho. That's definitely more very heavy psychological thriller.
Do you guys get caught up in the distinction? Like, does that matter to you guys all that much, or is it kind of like, because I kind of feel like you know horror when you see it, like when you're experiencing it in a film, you're like, okay, this is driving my nerves up the wall, and I'm on the edge of my seat. Do you guys get caught up in the classification, or does that not matter?
It usually doesn't bother me as long as there's horror elements in it. I'm game. I'm here for it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Like I don't have a solid line between the two. I feel like thriller, horror, mystery, they all share common elements. So they're all very closely related. So yeah, I'm not in the group that says this one is only a thriller and it's not a horror movie. I think there's, it's subjective. So if Silence of the Lambs scares you, then it could be a horror movie to you. If it doesn't, then maybe not. But I don't know. I don't like categorizing them like that. If they're scary, they're scary. I'm into it.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I'm in the same boat. For me, I think it's like, like Ashley said, I love Psycho. Obviously, I think Psycho is like it's one of my favorite films, right, in terms of horror. But then it's like a lot of classics. I like new stuff too, but like Rosemary's Baby is great. Obviously, The Exorcist, The Shining is probably, I think, The Shining's probably the best horror film ever made.
That's my favorite
And
movie of all time.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, just as you know, and the crazy thing is, I mean, yeah, it's a great film, but and then like all the Jordan Peele stuff, obviously, I think he's doing it really well. Ari Aster, Hereditary's incredible.
Mhm.
And then I don't Funny Games. Did you guys see Funny Games?
Oh yeah, both the
I don't
original
know
and the
if that's
remake.
if that's a horror film or not, but that's a crazy film. There were so many good ones. I mean, it's why people keep coming back to the genre, right?
Speaking of Ari Aster, have you seen Ari Aster's short? There's something wrong with the Johnsons, or strange with the
Some strange
Johnsons.
thing about the Johnsons.
Strange thing about the
Yeah,
Johnsons.
yeah, I have seen that. So like when we were deciding to make this short film, I watched this one short film called Metamorphosis, right? And it's 5 minutes. There's very little dialogue. It's just incredible. Like it's like a dream, like a dream, like a nightmare dream. And it's just one thing after another, but it's like a clear beginning, middle, and end. So like you get the full story arc. And I think that's really important when you're telling a story. And a lot of short films that I had seen before had not done that. It's been kind of like a scene or like the first act of a story. And this film Metamorphosis was just incredible. But I realized like pretty quickly, like the budget was going to be like trying to do something like that would be crazy. And we definitely wouldn't be able to pull it off. So then I started digging into more horror shorts, and I came across the strange thing about the Johnsons. And what I loved about that film was that it told a very clear story, beginning, middle, and end. And I thought was like a brilliant standalone piece of work that really showed off Astor's ability to tell a story. So yeah, definitely one of the films that inspired us to try to tell a full story in our short film, right? Trying to follow that structure in some sense.
That's why I brought that one up, was because I haven't felt like feelings I had about a short film since that one. And then I watched this and I was like, holy shit, like I haven't felt this in so long from at least a short film.
It's definitely an inspiration for us in terms of not so much content, but in terms of like, how do you tell a short film that feels like an actual feature film?
Right.
Yeah.
So we asked Ashley and Alice about their favorite horror movies. What are some of yours, and what kind of inspired you to want to be a filmmaker?
You guys are Gen Zers or millennials?
I mean,
Millennials?
millennial, but I have
Okay.
yeah, millennial.
Okay. Well, then you guys know. I mean, so like if you grew up wanting to be like a visual artist,
Mm.
as a millennial, it was basically like three spaces, right? That you were influenced by growing up. And it was like television, film, and video games, right? And
100%.
and if you're like wanting to create in those spaces or create visual art and reach like a mass audience, it's definitely one of those three spaces. So I think film is kind of like the space that I fell into because just like my interaction with it as a kid and how important it was to me growing up. But yeah, I think that's like the easiest answer for why. And then then my favorite films are, like I said, I think are like The Shining, Jordan Peele's work, Rosemary's Baby, Astor's Hereditary for sure. Midsommar is pretty good, but definitely Hereditary. The Babadook, Jennifer Kent, I think she makes Nightingale. I think she was another film by her,
Oh.
which also, I mean, some inspiration for our film as well in that. Yeah, I mean, there's those would be the kind of like the ones that come to mind. Obviously, there's like way more, right? I mean, Carrie, the slasher films, Halloween, Carpenter's The Thing, The Fog. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
it's my favorite genre. So when everything kind of, I just go on for hours talking about it, really.
And Ashley and Alice, kind of same question, but what got you in wanting to make films, to get into the industry?
I mean, I like most film actors, they probably started in theater. They probably started in High School Musicals. I too. And then at some point, probably during college, well, first of all, my parents watched a lot of movies. So I grew up watching stuff that my friends probably weren't watching. A lot of independent films. I also had like a close family friend who was getting, like, when screeners were still VHS tapes that would get sent. We had a family friend who was a writer, and we would illegally get sent those screeners. And so we watched all kinds of stuff at home. And then at some point during college, I made friends with the film students, and we started making shorts. And something sort of shifted in that I'm like, oh, I always loved the rehearsal process in theater. And I love performing, but once you start performing, it's kind of a different art form. And when I was filming, I felt like, oh, it's kind of like you're just in rehearsal the whole time. And you get to try different things, and then you just kind of move on to the next thing. You know, there isn't necessarily a get it perfect, nail it right. And then I moved out here, and I've just been kind of pursuing that since.
I have not had anywhere near a similar journey as Alice. I did not go to college or like perform in theater at any point in my life. I think for me, coming from a nursing background, I've always had a fascination for empathizing with other people and meeting them where they're at. And I started first in modeling, and that's what brought me out to Los Angeles. But submitting to all types of work, acting work fell into that category too. And I discovered a healthy fear, but again, fascination for telling someone's story and living it. And that is what has hooked me and kept me.
Very
I like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, when you were writing Alice and this being in your imagination, everything, trying to bring this to screen, was this always meant to be a short film, or did you intend it to be a full length?
Yeah, so I mean, Alice itself. This is the funny thing, actually, and you guys are partially to thank for this, and you know, some of the, and then obviously the actors and the great crew and the festivals that have had us. But the film was initially intended just to be a short film, which had a clear three-act structure, right? The beginning, middle, end, and it was honestly to just display our ability to kind of be able to tell a story, right? A feature story or a narrative story. So the what's happened though over the past couple of weeks is there has been people have been reaching out about making it into a feature film.
That was gonna be my next question.
Which is interesting. But we have some other stuff that we're working on currently, but yeah, I'm definitely open to it. But it was not the intention. The intention, and I was a little bit naive too. Like I didn't do a bunch of short film research, which is usually how you should approach things in life. I did not do that for this. I watched like one short film, realized that I wouldn't be able to make that one, and then I was like, well, I wonder if any of these other guys who are making feature films, I wonder if they've made anything good in the short world. And that's when I came across the strange thing about the Johnsons, and then started to kind of, okay, well, what can I do that tells a story in 25 minutes? I've learned since then that this is not how people operate, and I definitely would not recommend it for anyone else. Go in with a plan to shoot something shorter and then have a full length film plan, but that's not how we approached it.
I think it worked out perfect.
But thank you guys. Appreciate that.
So if you do make it a full length, would you like to bring back everybody, like the same cast and everything?
No, I definitely want to get rid of the cast.
No, I thought Ashley and Alice were amazing.
No, I'm gonna keep Connor and Eric, but get rid of Ashley and Alice. Those two were a real pain in the ass the entire time.
Speaking of Eric, I don't think I've ever hated somebody on screen so fucking much. I was like, I fucking hate this guy. But then when I shared my review, I think he was one of the most supportive ones when commenting on everything, sharing it, putting it on his story. I was like, okay, I like this guy. He's a good guy. I like him.
So can I tell a funny story about Eric really quickly?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So Eric is literally, and I think it was like a 13 or 14 page script. His character is in about 2.5 pages of the script, right? 3 pages of the script, total of like 5 minutes of screen time. He called me. I probably spent 10 to 12 hours on the phone with Eric talking about his character, talking about his scenes. He convinced me to rewrite a couple of the scenes that his character was in. He had a very strong idea, which was different than my idea of who the character was, and we had to like find a compromise on that. But he was very passionate, and for someone who was only going to be on screen for 3 to 5 minutes, he definitely understood the impact he was going to have, and just handled it like a complete professional. So really nothing but great things to say about him.
Can I ask how he was written before the changes were made?
Yes, you can. What's interesting, so there's like when I come into a project, I have like these very strong impressions of like who these characters are before we ever go into casting, right? And then what you do is you try to like cast basically as close to whatever that impression of that character is. And like you usually try to find someone who's 75 to 80% of the way there, because that way that they're going to be able to execute the role. What was interesting about the character of Walt was it was very much based on 1 to 2 people that I really experienced in my life, right? So I had a very clear idea about like who that character was. And then Eric came in and basically was like, this is wrong because you're not going to be able to get across what you want to get across in this short amount of time if you do it this way. And he was right. He was correct about that, right? So it was really like amping up the character, amping up kind of the intentionality behind the character. And before, the character was much more, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a character compared to. You guys seen Eyes Wide Shut?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a very long time.
Sidney Pollock's character, or I think it's Sidney Pollock is the actor in Eyes Wide Shut. He's the guy in the billiards room who's kind of explaining to Tom Cruise at the end, like, hey, like you shouldn't be, poking around in these areas. And he's kind of gaslighting him a little bit, but he's like more refined, right? So that's kind of who Walt was before. And then Eric brought this like villainous side to the character, which wasn't like as explicit initially. But he was right. He was correct. We had some serious. He wanted to go even further, and I think that's kind of your job as a director, right? Then you got to pull back a little bit and say, okay, well, obviously there's something wrong here. If someone's diagnosing something wrong in the writing, there's probably something wrong. Let's take a look at it. He wants to take it to wearing a white robe and stuff like that. That's probably not right either. But maybe there's like a middle ground here that makes sense.
I think that's really cool as a director that because you hear a lot of horror stories about directors like what I have written, this is what's happening. I'm not taking any ideas, criticism. So that shows a lot as a director, I think.
I mean, yeah, you could ask these. I mean, everybody has to weigh in. Everybody has to especially in this film, and I'll let Ashley and I'll speak to this, but they, it's a story about really about 2 women, right? And obviously the elephant in the room here is I am a straight white man, right? Writing a story about 2 women. So I was constantly coming back, especially to Alice Skok, because she's the audience's point of view on the film. But I was constantly coming back to her and saying, is this reading true to you? Like, is this right? Is this feel right? Does this feel authentic? Like, if it's not true, if it's not playing as true, tell me. Because the audience is going to relate to you, and you know better than I do whether or not this is working. And I think there's got to be some sort of level of trust as a director once you do the casting, right? Casting is where you make your hard choices, right? Once you cast, to some extent, the actor takes ownership of that role. And if you're not going to let them have ownership, and if you're not going to hear their perspective and allow them to weigh in on it, then like, what's the point? Like, what are you doing, right?
No, I think that's brilliant, because there are obviously a scene that has very strong trigger warning. So you doing that and getting their input, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, so to touch on that scene, the abduction scene, if you will, I know you mentioned Rosemary's Baby earlier. Was that inspired by Rosemary's Baby by chance?
Yeah. So what's funny about this is when we screened it at Holly Shorts, there's another director who came, who I met there, who's very supportive, and we're good friends now. But he said, "Oh my God, this film reminds me so much of Rosemary's Baby." And I was like, and no, absolutely not. I was not thinking about that at all. But I think what happens in life is you can't help but be inspired by the things you love, right? And the things that inspire you. So Rosemary's Baby wasn't, like a conscious thing. It wasn't, tell you what, there's one film that there was some conscious coding with in this, and that was The Shining. There's things about that happened in The Shining, not surface level things. There was things that sub level things about The Shining that we coded into the film. But other than that, there was no conscious influence of any other sort of movie.
No, it's really interesting, and just to say, if it's 23 minutes and it's a masterpiece.
Oh, come on.
Just to throw it out there.
I agree.
The other thing you guys are doing, though, the other thing is now I got managers and agents reaching out to me, and I'm like, I'm hesitant to send them the screener now. I'm like, you guys are going to be disappointed when you see it.
You have nothing to be ashamed of.
No, not at all.
Like when I first
Send 'em
watched
all.
it, we talked about it a lot on the last episode. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna throw this on. I got to be a dad right now, cook dinner, hang out with the kids, And I couldn't step away from, like, I was in the between the kitchen and the living room, just standing there. I was like, I can't stop watching this. I was just hooked instantly.
That's awesome. I mean, that's you love to hear that. It's really the actors. So I think that their performances, I think, are really kind of were the difference maker, I think, in the film.
That's another reason I asked if you plan on keeping everybody, because Ashley, Alice, Eric, everybody stood out. Like, they're acting like it looked like everybody's been doing this forever. Like it didn't feel like a short film. Like, I felt like I was engaged in a full-length feature. I was like, this needs to be a full-length feature, honestly.
I mean, if it can be that would be cool down the line. But Ashley, why don't Ashley actually read for the role of Joan first. So do you want to talk
really?
about that story?
It was so exciting. I actually submitted an audition for both roles, and so Anthony was very smart. He had us do monologues that were from other pieces of work, but we kind of put the tone of the characters we were auditioning for into those monologues. The monologue for the role of Alice was actually a monologue from Hereditary. So very interesting, but it was cool getting to audition for both characters. They're very different people, but they are similar in some ways. There was this, and when I met Alice cast as Dr. Joan, I instantly felt that sisterly connection with her. But I attended the call back with Anthony, and he asked me, is there a part that you're more drawn to than others? And I remember, Anthony, I told you, I said, I have a fascination for people in casting saying, I see this in you. And then me discovering that along the way. So I let him decide.
So I got to ask now, what was the dialogue from Hereditary?
So it was in the support group meeting where she's talking about why she's there and dumping all of her trauma in her life on everyone. And I am so grateful for this. I actually had not seen Hereditary yet at the time, because a portion of me has lived under a rock. But I was glad I hadn't seen it because it didn't influence my decisions. I played it much more, it was much more difficult for Alice's character to the character of Alice to get through those words. And when I watched the film, I'm like, wow, she's just saying all these things like it doesn't even matter and it doesn't even hurt her anymore. And it was so interesting to see how that beautiful monologue could be performed two different ways with two different characters' influence on it.
And then Alice, when you played Joan, did you take any inspiration from any other character, or was this all you that you brought to Joan?
Oh, I think, well, Anthony very cleverly, like,
We could say that the character of Joan Weaver, the research that Joan Weaver did is based loosely based on some real research.
right.
Oh, okay.
Having access to just being able to read about that real research was very helpful for me. Because what it illuminated was like, okay, there are people out there like this. This doesn't have to be all made up circumstances, made up world, you know. And then I was able to approach it like people aren't crazy and look for sort of the reasoning behind it. But the original piece that Anthony provided when I was auditioning sort of describes, and it wasn't, I don't know how much of that very original text made it into the film, but it sort of discusses how she's been doing this for a while and like all the different personalities she's encountering and how it's like, hey, if I treat these people like they're all crazy right off the bat, I'm not gonna get anywhere. I'm not gonna learn what I came to learn. And that was really helpful because then I could talk with Alice's character like a friend, like a confidant. And I could come from a place of experience and curiosity rather than look at these weirdos and I'm gonna like point out how crazy they are. So that was really helpful. And as an actor, coming at things with curiosity and questions and just trying to observe is kind of where you're starting as a baseline for any character. So to kind of allow myself to continue to live in that space throughout the process of learning and rehearsing and filming, it was a real gift. It was fun to stay there.
And can I just add, you know, the big challenge, and I told this to the producers when we were doing the casting, I said, like, this is casting. I knew that the character of Alice was going to be like, in some sense, the scene stealer because of the emotional roller coaster that her character goes on. But the character of Joan really has to anchor the film, right? It's gotta be relatable. They gotta be smart. They gotta be likable. They have to be curious, but not be naive. They gotta be everything, right? They gotta be everything to the audience, which is like a really difficult thing to try to get across in like 25 minutes. So it was really, really fortunate to work with Alice. And I told one of the producers, they were like, well, in a perfect world, who would you cast for this? And I was like, in a perfect world, I go back 30 years and bring Jodie Foster onto this. And I think we ended up with, like, honestly, like an even stronger representation with Alice. So it was great. She was fantastic.
I thought Alice was amazing. I thought Ashley was amazing. I know earlier I asked when writing this and imagining this what inspirations you have, but this is literally like 3 different movies in one. So for the cult aspect, is there any inspiration you had for that aspect?
Yeah, there is. But I can't
talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on it. So again, this kind of bleeds into this other project I've been working on.
Oh, okay.
And it's been a 7-year project.
Wow.
And and it's great, and it's going to come out probably next year. But it's not like a perfect parallel, right? Like a lot of what that project is, which is a project about an alleged doomsday cult, an active doomsday cult, right? That we've been in filming with for on and off for 7 years, right? Is different, right? Because a lot of what this film is about is actually the frustration of dealing with the business end of that film.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, it's not a perfect parallel. I definitely don't want to put out there that this is like a direct one-to-one representation. In fact, I don't think any of the actors probably never knew that. They didn't know that. We didn't have that conversation with Eric. So it's really kind of like, in some abstract way, it's informed by that, but it's not directly informed by that, if that makes sense.
No, totally understand. And like Ian and I talked last episode how Eric really did such a fantastic job of taking that like David Koresh role, that Jim Jones role, and like kind of blending it into his own thing.
It's my favorite, I mean, not my favorite, but like one of the lines that so Eric also, by the way, I should say this, because we filmed all of this in 3 days, right? Which is like
wow,
extraordinary pace to kind of hit all this, really 2 days and then a pickup day. Eric, most of our takes were like 4 takes and then out, right? Eric in his bedroom scene with Alice, like he nailed that, he nailed it the first time. Like literally like you're watching it, I'm like, okay, like let's run it again for safety, but that was it, right? I mean, he was so creepy. I'll never forget, we had this great key grip named Mercy. I think her last name's changed now because she's married, but her name is Mercy Hasselblad, and she was standing next to me, like behind the monitor, and we're watching him deliver this thing, and her mouth's just like open, right? She's like, holy shit. She's like, this is it. This is the moment in the film right now when he leans back and says, all you have to do is say, please, Walt. And, it's just that kind of skin crawling moment. So yeah, he was great. Connor was great. The whole cast was really fantastic. Really, really fortunate to work with such talented actors.
Yeah, Connor stood out. Everybody stood out. But yeah, Joan, like you really, like he said, brought everything together. Ashley, I felt so bad for your character too. I was like, oh my, like, what am I watching right now?
It was really fun, and I felt like my character never plainly said what she thought. There were so many eggshells she was walking on from the beginning, and I found it interesting that her more powerful scenes were the ones where she didn't speak.
Absolutely.
I really like that.
I think, Ashley, you said that, and I think it's like prescient, but you said this is a film about all the things that aren't said, right? And you said that, I think, to me when we started filming, and I think I never really thought about it that way, but that is very much the case, right?
It is.
Yeah, I feel like it's one that like I love the dialogue, and obviously that adds a lot to it, but if you took it, if it was a silent film, it would still be just as powerful, just because of the performances and the story.
That's awesome. I think that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, like the no dialogue. I actually just watched one with no dialogue at all, and it might be my first or second favorite film of the year right now.
Oh, really? What's that one?
Azrael with what's her name from Ready or Not?
Samara Weaving.
Azrael with Samara Weaving.
Nice. You gotta send a link to that. I want to check that out.
It's just on the festival circuits right now, just like your film. I don't remember the release date. It's a screener that IFC sent to me.
Okay, well then don't send it to me. Wink, wink.
But no, like Ian said, like it was like it could have no dialogue and still be just as powerful as it was.
So, Alice, I wanted to ask, with this production, was there anything that stood out with this production that was different from other stuff that you've worked on?
Oh, good question. Well, it was all shot in one location, which was a really interesting experience because you kind of end up staying in it the whole time, whether or not you chose to. Just because you're surrounded by, we have this really unique house in the valley. And so you're kind of immersed in it the whole time. And like Anthony was saying, it was a really quick shoot, but they were long days, they were later nights, and we were all pretty much there the whole time and all together. And a lot of stuff I've worked on, you know, you kind of like drop in and then you leave and then you move locations. And so you don't have a sense, I had a real sense of tone for this in a way I haven't in other projects until I've seen them after the fact. I was like, oh, I get what we're doing here, like pretty much right off the bat.
Nice. And Ashley, same question for you.
I really enjoyed losing myself in my own little world because I felt the character of Alice was very much in her own little world. And similar to the actress Alice, I found the house a wealth for that process, looking at every little detail, the things that already existed in the house paired with the things that art department brought in. I was able to make a story about everything, and it just helped me construct this beautiful little world that I just floated away into and got to stay. It was fun.
For Anthony, so one thing I also said in my review, I said this is an example of less is more. And when I said that, I meant the dialogue, the costumes, the set design. Were you going for that aspect, or was it budgetary reasons of just being simple?
Yeah, it's always a little bit of both, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I think the first thing you have to consider is the budget, right? Because it's a rookie mistake to try to do everything with nothing, with a little amount, and we had a bigger budget than I'd say, you know, than a lot of films. We're fortunate, but also I thought that the most effective way to tell this story was to try to make it feel as real as possible. So for me, it was like, oh, who are these characters? What's the most effective way to communicate the emotions that we're trying to relay here? And to make sure that when the moment comes to flip the film, that it's believable and it's effective, right? Because all film is suspense of disbelief, right? So it's like, okay, so let's ground it. I want the home to feel lived in. The actors have to have like their backstory. The color choices were pretty deliberate. But you know, again, some of that's even based on location, right? Like what color are the walls, and what's the primary color going to be for the, you know, the cult members versus Joan's colors, what's she wearing, right? So like those things are all very considered. Every single piece of art that you see placed in the film is picked by me, and then our art department goes through and they figure out where they're going to place it. I placed a few pieces, but for the most part, that's a collaboration. So yeah, everything's every decision is well thought through, but it is definitely a choice to ground the film, to try to ground it as much as possible.
Yeah, kind of touching on that. Trying to kind of tiptoe around any spoilers. Obviously, we don't want to spoil anything for the audience before they can see it. But I rewatched it today, so there's a few things I caught, and I had one question, and obviously we're not going to get into it, but I'm just curious. The object that is used in Alley, is there a significance to what that object is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can talk about the object. So the object is a pyramid, right? It's a totem. We chose the pyramid because pyramids have some like mythological background in alien, mythology. But I think there's also there's religious undertones to what you can see from a pyramid, right? I like the fact that there's the three sides you can see, and then there's like this bottom, this under part, and these other parts you can't see. So that was kind of part of it as well. But the pyramid, yeah, it was mainly playing into the trope of the alien idea, but also trying to consider like what would be an object that can be, you know, used to deliver the blows that need to be delivered.
Awesome.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I saw that the first time, I was like, pyramid. That's the first thing I thought of was aliens.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder if that does have a significance.
All the art has, you know, I don't want to give anything away. I want people to really pay attention and try to watch. But there's this whole other aspect, which will be fun to see if anyone ever picks up on it, because it's a short film, so maybe no one ever will. They won't give it enough attention. But there's this whole other way to watch the film, actually. It's told through a line of dialogue, and then it's delivered through kind of like some things that we pulled from The Shining, techniques that we pulled from The Shining. And I think it plays kind of interesting. And then there's one other thing to the film too, which only one person has caught so far, and it was at the Playhouse West Festival, which we were at, and I was coming off the stage for a Q&A, and this like young girl walked up to me and she said, "What does it say on the fridge?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she said, "What does it say on the fridge?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." It's like, you caught that, huh? So, and that was like that's a fun thing, because, it allows us to deliver messages in the film and deliver messages also into the future, about, other things, if we ever want to play back to that.
I'm going to go back and watch after this now and go see what it says on the fridge.
I say I did catch that today. Not what it says on the fridge, but that obviously there's a shot of the door of the refrigerator, and I kind of like made a mental note and then completely forgot about it. I meant to go back and like kind of like pause it and see what I could find out. So that's very interesting. I love that.
I was making mental notes throughout the movie too, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna remember this, see something pops up, but then that scene with Eric happened in the room and I just forgot everything.
And we were talking, Ashley and I were actually talking about this the other day too. Like we all have these like group text messages. There's like 30 of them now, where it's the cast and crew, and I started all of them, so I apologize to you guys. But we were talking about the other day, we were talking about how surprise, right? Surprise is really like the key element, the key way in which like people learn, right? If you're surprised by something, it sticks with you. It tends to like burn into your memory banks. It's why you remember like all the plot twists in a film, but you never remember like the dialogue from the first act, right? So in some ways, like this film, the other way to kind of like view the film, which is like, obviously there's a surface level narrative that is what the story is, right? There's this other fun thing that we incorporated, that brings the audience into it and plays on this idea of attention in a weird way. That was inspired by The Shining. That's the one inspiration that was deliberately put into the film.
Now I want to go back and watch it for like a few different times to see what more I can pick up, because I watched it twice, but I'm excited now. So as a director, if you had an unlimited amount of money, the rights to anything, what is a franchise that you would remake or make a sequel to? And then for the actresses, what is one that you would love to star in, be a part of, or have inspirations to write yourself?
You guys go first.
No.
You guys go.
I don't even have a specific franchise in mind, but I guess this is very surface level. Lately, I've been hoping to get a mermaid part or a witch part.
Like a happy mermaid or like an evil siren?
No, an evil siren that's going to
I
drag
would
sailors.
love that. We need that. We need that.
Yes, yeah.
That's not a franchise, though. That's cheating. You skirted the rules.
That's cool though. I like that. I like that answer.
We do have the Winnie the Pooh Pooniverse now, so there could be the Little Mermaid. It could be a horror version of Little Mermaid.
That would be dope.
Ashley, you saying witch reminded me. So, The Wizard of Oz is part of a trilogy. Maybe there are even 4 books. And The Wizard of Oz is like the most tame version. The rest are really fucked up. And like Ozma, she like cuts off, the queen like cuts off her head and like takes other people's heads and puts them on her body and stuff. It's all very scary. My mom read them to me as a child, and I was like, "Oh, we should be remaking these." And maybe as like a mini series or something, do the whole story, which gets you to the Wizard of Oz. I thought that would be fun.
Alice, will you bring me on to direct that? That would be a good time.
Yes.
Fun.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
Oh man, this is a hard one. I feel like the horror IP has been a mess lately. And I feel like I have ideas about directors who I'd like to put in different IPs more so than myself. I think if I could pick one, you know, strangely enough, it would probably be like Salem's Lot or something like that, which is going to come out now. And
yeah, like 3 weeks.
You might have to wait another 20 years for that. But that would be Salem's Lot. You know, it was always appealing to me, and you know, it was only a TV movie before this thing. So I think it was only a TV movie. Is that right? You guys know better.
The original's the mini series, I believe, and then there's the
Rob
early
Lowe
2000s. Yeah, the early 2000s ones with Rob Lowe. I don't remember if that's a movie or a mini series though as well.
I can't remember.
Yeah, Salem's Lot would be cool.
What adaptation would you do?
You talking to them?
I guess I'm talking to anyone now.
I think what ones would you guys want to tackle?
Honestly, Lost Boys.
Lost Boys. That was the
favorites
first
of all time.
That's the first horror movie I ever saw. I was at a sleepover, and I was scared of vampires for the next like 10 years of my life. And
that or the Monster Squad, actually, the Monster Squad. But the Monster Squad still holds up so well, even though what is it, 86 or something? 83? I can't remember, but 2 of my favorites.
How would you change Lost Boys? How would you update it?
That's a good question.
I mean, I would just modernize it. Obviously, that's in the early 80s as well, mid 80s. But I don't know. I would just update it. Like they kind of did a very not direct update to it, but there was one on Netflix called The Bronx versus Vampires, or Vampires versus the Bronx or something. And it's like obviously it's not in LA, but it's a bunch of kids, and it's very similar to the other story. And I thought they did it very well. It got bad reviews, but I thought it was so fun, and they did very well with that. Ian, did you see that one?
I'm aware of it, but I have not watched it. Not
I
yet.
definitely recommend it. Vampires versus the Bronx it's literally like a knockoff of Lost Boys, but the kids are a lot younger, and I think it's done very well.
Is the music as good?
No music will ever be as good.
That's the big thing with the Lost Boys.
I will never. If I did that, I would never be able to touch the music.
Yeah, exactly. You got to bring it back. What about you, Ian?
I don't have a franchise, but if there was one movie to remake, it's one I always choose that I would love to see remade is Darkness Falls. I would love to see it as an R-rated, scary movie with practical effects.
That's a good choice. I like that. That's a really good choice. Well, there we are. I think together we should form a studio and remake all of these movies.
Might as well. For me, at least this year alone, the mainstream horror and the big studios, I think, has been so lackluster, but the indie horror this year has been just phenomenal.
You guys know this, of course. I don't know if Ashley and Alice know this, but Late Night with the Devil is like an amazing film.
My wife and I got to see that one in the theater. I was so glad we caught that one in the theater.
It's an amazing horror film. Like one of my favorites ever. I think it's incredible. There's been other great ones this year too. I mean, I thought Oddity was fun. That was cool. It wasn't like scary, but it was fun. And Strange Darling, even though it's maybe not a horror, I thought that one gave me like Tarantino vibes, right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Very
when
Tarantino vibes.
When I woke up the next morning, I was thinking, oh man, this is like a Quentin Tarantino type, early Tarantino type film. Yeah, there's been a lot of really good thrillers and horrors this year. I think that's the fun part about the genre. Like, and I don't know exactly I don't want to just chalk it up solely to Jordan Peele, but I think he elevated the game. He made it where people could look at horror and say, hey, you can have a great film and you can add these other things to it, right? And then other people started doing that. Not that every film needs that, but I think that the creativity behind his films and the way that you can bring an issue in that can agitate and force people to think and challenge people, I think I think that's like at an all-time high in the genre right now. And I think it's great. I think it's been great for the genre,
Well, and horror, that space that allows indie filmmakers to get seen, unlike, like, you can be an indie filmmaker and make a rom-com, but the likelihood of it being shown at an AMC is very low. And yet with indie horror, there's just a much larger chance that your film's actually going to reach an audience. And sometimes you even see stuff billed as horror for that reason. And then you go to it and you're like, this was just like suspense. This was just a thriller, But it's cool that those filmmakers are like, oh, I can make horror and there can be a lot more going on. So I can use this opportunity to tell more of the kinds of stories I want to be telling.
Yeah, exactly. And in indie horror, it sucks, but a lot of it relies on word of mouth and getting it out there. So Anthony, like you reached out to all these people to get your film out, and we're talking about it, telling our friends about it. So like that's unfortunately the way indie horror is. But like I view indie horror way more than I view and appreciate indie horror way more than mainstream because they have all the tools. They have the budget for the marketing, everything, and you guys don't. So a lot of it, like us content creators, we really try to push out indie horror as much as we can because we know how much goes into making it, the work for the acting, the directing, writing, everything. It's so much work, and I appreciate everything about it.
Can I just say though that you're the future, right? Like, and I think everyone recognizes that there's a shift going on right now. You guys are the new critics, like truly, like the digital creators on TikTok, on Instagram, whatever the next platform is. As long as you guys stay up to date with the technology, you guys are going to be the people the trusted voices that people look to, right? Like the way that people look at critics today. So, and I'm thrilled to, whenever we get a written review, of course, but having you guys is honestly more valuable. And the thing that frightens me with having an extensive background in the entertainment industry is like, you guys, it's going to be up to you guys to stick true to what's really good and what's really valuable, because just like the music industry, for example, right? Payola became a big thing, and radio, this is why you have the same 30 songs on the radio, pop radio, right? So you guys are the big companies now, the big studios, and the big independent studios recognize your value now. So it's going to be on you guys to strike that balance of like, hey, I'm going to cover this film because I definitely want access to that studio, right? And I also going to cover this film because I love it. And I think as long as you guys stay true with that, your audience is going to follow you, and it's just going to continue to grow. And and we're going to keep coming and knocking on your doors, because you guys are the lifeblood of the industry. I mean, you truly are. The reason, to Alice's point, the reason people make horror films is because they know, but there's a chance that you're going to get a return on it. And if you get a return on your film, then you get the opportunity to make a second film, right? Like, it's something like 85% of people who make one film don't go on to make a second film, right? Because most films lose money. And horror, you have at least a fighting chance of making your money back if you're creative, if it reaches enough people, if it's good, right? So keep doing what you guys are doing, and thank you. Honestly, thank you. Like, I'm not going to say who, but we've already got people reaching out to us about Alice, because you guys, started the momentum for us. You guys, Horror Facts, Sledgehammer, Jen, Jordan, those people, your voices amplified this to a point where you know, where people are reaching out to us now. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate those words.
So art and press have to work hand in hand. You know, someone's got to get the word out there. We got to do our jobs and create, and hopefully people feel some way when they see it, whether they love it or they hate it or whatever it may be. As long as it's not indifference, we always think that that's, you know, a pretty good place to be. And you guys, you know, being the champions of it is amazing for the film. And thanks so much for taking the time and having us on. And, you know, like I said, we're not even that cool. So the fact that you guys were talking about for an hour is pretty awesome.
I disagree.
was-
I think you're all very cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, we're fans of horror movies. That's why we made these accounts and why we do this. So you guys keep making awesome movies, and we'll keep promoting them for you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
Like
so
we don't
jealous
get.
you guys are going to Fantastic Fest too. I mean, that's going to be fun. You guys are going to have a lot. You guys both going?
No, just Colby on this one.
Just me, unfortunately. I wish Ian could come with me.
So yeah, I'm sure you guys want to get us off here. I do have a question for you guys though. Do you guys think that the future of social media, of the way that like you guys foresee yourselves, you understand like your roles in this whole thing, right? Like, you know, where it's going.
The way you said that though, I've honestly never looked at it that way. Like I just do this for fun. Like I don't make money for this. I do it for fun. And like recently I have like been getting like paid offers to promote stuff, and I'm like, wait, what? Like that's a thing?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely feel good about that. That means you're doing something right. The flip side is too, though, I think what's interesting is like, for me, I had no idea that this community, so I was like off social media forever. My wife finally was like, oh, you're in an Oscar qualifying film festival. You should probably open an Instagram account. And I was like, okay, let me do that. And then I found out about this whole network, right? Of that, like, of course that should have, you know, been on my mind ahead of time. But yeah, you guys are like, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because, you know, the varieties, the THRs, the deadlines, you know, New York Times, the places you want to be, right? There's gatekeepers, right? To all those companies. And you guys probably see it in this industry too, right? Like there's gatekeep, you know, Bloody Disgusting or Dread Central or whoever, right? I mean, send them an email. You got to be someone to get an email back, right? There's gatekeepers there. So I think it's important that you guys, you all stay true to what you like, what you believe. You guys are the connoisseurs, right? So, you know, if it's a good ale, it's a good ale. If it's a good IPA, it's a good IPA. It's a good cab, it's a good cab. Make sure that you guys stay true to that, because you guys are going to be the gatekeepers for the Bloody Disgustings, the Fangorias, the Dread Centrals. They're going to look at you guys, and everyone else is going to be looking at you guys to see what you like. So understand that there is real power there, right? Real influence, and, you know, understand when to give and when to exercise that power.
So when can we expect to see Alice and the Little Green Men in a general audience fashion?
What we're learning is that there are some people who are not very comfortable with the content of our film, and we're going to figure out probably over the next 3 or 4 weeks here which festivals we're going to be in for the rest of the year. And the plan initially was to release the film in 2025. That could happen sooner. I think it'll still be 2025, but it could happen sooner. So yeah, just please continue following you guys, and follow our creator handles to stay up to date. And, you know, we'll kind of keep you guys posted on that.
Awesome.
And then before we get off, I'd like to ask all three of you if you have any upcoming projects you'd like to talk about, and then throw in your Instagram handles, TikTok if you have it, whatever socials people can follow you on.
Okay. Well, I was attempting to produce 2 short films, but that has greatly slowed down because I've been busy working for other people and bringing their stories to life. So, but all of my socials are just my name, Ashley BeLoat. And when I get a break in my work, I will be doing some short films for the short film festival circuit.
Alice?
My social is just Instagram. I've never figured out TikTok, but it is just my Alice Skok. And I'm like, what can I talk about? What can I not talk about? Well, I know I can talk about, I think, Mr. Floof, which is another short film that should be festivaling here soon, but is not spooky. So it might not be the same audience. And then okay, I'm not sure what I can say, so I'm gonna keep it close to the chest. But
You're good. You're good. As soon as you guys get a horror project, send that over to us, and we will do our job.
Absolutely.
And then Anthony, what can you talk about that you have upcoming?
Yeah. So I have a cult docu-series about an alleged doomsday cult that I've been working on for the past 7 years. That'll be out sometime next year. We're finishing that up basically through the rest of this year. I'm literally getting right up to go to a meeting about a feature horror film called We Buy Souls, which I'm doing with the same producing partners as Alice and the Little Green Men and a bigger production company that's kind of like similar sensibilities, right, to Alice. So that'll be cool. We're just kind of like the script's done. We just put our deck together. Now we're going into casting. So that'll be fun. And I have 2 podcasts in development. I'm executive producing with a company called Cup and Nuzzle. They're based out of the UK. They do content for like BBC Radio, Spotify, Wondery, places like that. So
Awesome.
And then same with you. As soon as you got stuff that's ready to go, let us know.
I'm gonna send you. I'll send you the deck for We Buy Souls and let you guys check it out. See what you think. I'd love to
Awesome.
pick your
I
brains
love
on
that
it.
title.
Yeah. Again, thank you, all of you. Thank you, Ashley, Alice, Anthony, for coming on, and thank you for letting us view this film. It's a strong movie, and I'm really excited for people to see it.
Ashley, Alice, Anthony, anything else to add before we wrap it up here?
no, this was great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And yeah, once the film is released, then we would love to have you all back as a group so that we can talk full spoilers and get into it. But
Yeah, I would like
again,
that.
right? But again, thank you so much for taking time out to come hang out and talk with us. We appreciate it. Everyone, just be on the lookout. We will obviously keep you updated for when Alice and the Little Green Men is out for viewing. But again, thank you so very much to Ashley, Alice, and Anthony. We appreciate it. Thank you all for listening and watching. We'll see you next week.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you.
There you go. That's it.